Okay, so Alex Murdaugh is back in the news. Actually, the court clerk is back in the news, specifically giving a rebuttal to what Alec is trying to appeal on. Specifically, he's saying that the guilty conviction is not valid because the court clerk was prejudicial, right? You can see they say, I did not tell the jury not to be fooled. I did not instruct the jury to watch him closely. Pretty much what Alec defense is saying is that the court clerk was guiding the jury, or I guess persuading the jury to give them a guilty verdict. That's what he's trying to appeal on, or that's the grounds. He further denied, or Hill further denied conversing with the jury. Hill further denied conversing with the jury about the case or preventing them from taking smoke breaks until they had wrapped up the deliberation. She said, "You are not allowed to smoke cigarettes until you're going to give me a guilty verdict, God damn it. No cigarettes." How many of y'all smoke cigarettes, by the way? In the 3-page affidavit that denies 26 separate allegations, the Colleton County Court clerk wrote that she did not fabricate a Facebook post to get an undecided juror booted from the panel. Okay, so, if this is true, this court clerk, Becky Hill, that's her name, that's this lady reading the paper over here. If she was doing things like this, then I'm definitely going to see a trial granted. Alex Murdaugh's going to be retried if this is the case. I mean, even one of these, this is really bad, guys. You can't be doing stuff like that when you're a court clerk. Indeed, the machinations alleged do not even begin to make sense, Deputy Attorney General Crichton Waters wrote in the filing. Only Alex Murdaugh could conceive of such a confounded gambit. Okay, pretty much what they're saying is, this is ridiculous. Alex Murdaugh's the only person that could come up with this type of stuff. But hey, this guy, for those of you that don't know, got convicted of murder, got convicted of killing his wife and his son, Paul and Maggie, and he was an attorney. His family has been attorneys in South Carolina for 3 generations. I think they have a picture of the dad or the grandfather up in the courthouse in which he was convicted of murder in. So very influential family, very deep ties to the courts. And I'm going to play a little summary video of what actually he did.
For the murders of his wife and his son, and 2 counts of possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. Maggie and his son Paul were killed 13 months ago. CNN is also reporting a blood spatter was found on Murdaugh's clothing. It places him at the crime scene at the time of it. In a news release just issued by the South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson, it says in part that all of the efforts of our office and law enforcement agencies involved in this investigation.
So this guy, Alex Murdaugh, killed his wife and his son. He got convicted of it. This is video of him getting arrested, but when they did the trial, there was a guilty verdict. So he claims that he wasn't there. He was at his mom's house. He was out and about. He got home to their ranch, which is like a $4 million piece of property in South Carolina, and he found them dead. Now, one thing you have to know about this case is I think a year, or I don't know if it was a year or a couple of months before this murder happened, Alex's son, Paul, was involved in a boat accident where he got drunk. Well, everybody was drunk on the boat, but Paul, his son, was driving or riding the boat, wrecked it, and a girl died. Got a lot of hate mail, got a lot of threats. Everybody was mad at him. The whole community pretty much disavowed him. He was disgraced. And Alex Murdaugh, this guy here, the guy who killed his wife and son, tried to put it off on that event, saying that there were a lot of angry people, there were a lot of threats. He was getting sued, by the way, from the family who lost their girl in that accident. So he tried to build an alibi, tried to say he wasn't at the scene of the crime, and said he had no idea who would want to do this, but maybe it's someone who was vengeful.
have been focused on seeking justice for the victims' families. He goes on to thank SLED, which is the State Law Enforcement Division, and all of the attorneys in the office, saying that they won't be able to comment anymore because this is now a pending trial. The chief of SLED said this: over the last 13 months, agents and our partners have worked day in and day out to build a case against the person responsible for the murders of Maggie and Paul, and to exclude those who were not. At no point did agents lose focus on this investigation from the beginning. I have been clear. The priority was to ensure justice was served today as one more step in a long process for justice for Maggie and Paul. That from Chief Mark Keel with with SLED, which is the State Law Enforcement Division there in South Carolina. Breaking news: the grand jury, which was impaneled, and they were at work this morning at 9 o'clock Eastern time. They showed up to the courthouse. The prosecution obviously presented the evidence needed for an indictment. And
so that's pretty much a summary of what happened up until this point. He is in jail, but he's trying to get an appeal. Now, with the appeal, what he's saying is that there was a court clerk, and a court clerk is someone who's going to kind of administer the jury while the trial is going on. He's saying that the court clerk was influencing the jury in a biased way. And on that grounds, he wants a retrial, which he might get, actually.
guilty verdict. Becky Hill, the clerk of courts for Colleton County, being accused of jury tampering by Alex Murdaugh's lawyers.
We never considered the likelihood, as reported to us by the jurors, that the clerk of court would go in to the sanctity of the jury room before he testified and tell the jurors, don't be fooled by his testimony.
Murdaugh's lawyers claim Hill was out for fame and fortune. Now the ghostwriter of her book talks about his experience with her.
The only thing I can tell you is her integrity, which is she's one of the most genuine people I have ever met. She's a rule follower.
Thanks for joining us here on Law and Crime.
Okay, so pretty much what they're saying is that the court clerk was influencing the jury in a negative manner, or I guess in a biased manner, where she was telling them not to believe Alex Murdaugh's testimony, telling them that he lies, telling them that they want to do a guilty verdict quickly and get out of there. If that's the case, guys, you got to remember these trials cost hundreds and thousands, sometimes millions of dollars all around. So taxpayers' money, plaintiffs' money, defendants' money, and then the time. Jurors are taken away from their work and their jobs and their families, sometimes on weeks, sometimes on months end, to be able to try a defendant. So, if these allegations are true and she did have jury tampering, allegedly, or committed jury tampering, because that's what it would be, it's a very serious issue. And it pretty much undoes or undoes all the work that everybody put in to get that guilty verdict. So, very serious stuff.
Murdaugh's lawyers say that became a problem when Hill started discussing her feelings about Murdaugh with jurors and having private conversations with the foreperson.
We did try to reach out to most all of them that we could get in touch with, but the information we got, I can tell you, was independent of each juror. The first juror we talked to, we got information about Ms. Hill saying, don't be fooled. And then the second juror, independent of the first juror, says the same thing, and the third juror, independent of the other two, say the same thing. And so we're very confident that the information is accurate.
Murdaugh's.
So what he's saying, that's the attorney. By the way, those three guys that look like they're wearing costumes from The Matrix, those are his attorneys. And what they're saying is they talked to each independent juror, and each independent juror was telling them a different story about this court clerk, about how she was trying to influence them to have a guilty verdict.
Lawyers say their client deserves a new trial for the murders of his wife Maggie and son Paul if the allegations they are making are true. Hill, according to Murdaugh's motion for a new trial, made up a story about a Facebook post that claimed a juror dubbed Egg Lady had talked with her ex-husband about the case. That juror was removed right before closing arguments and replaced with an alternate, James McDowell, whose brother happened to be one of the deputies who responded to Moselle the night of the murders. Murdaugh's lawyers believe Egg Lady would have voted not guilty, possibly causing a hung jury. Becky Hill was a fixture at the trial. Everyone called her Miss Becky. She even received a shout-out from the Attorney General following the verdict.
I want to thank the Colleton County Clerk of Court, Becky Hill, and her entire team and their staff. I don't know. I call her Becky Booth. That's her nickname. But Madam Clerk, wherever you are tonight. I'm sorry. That's my pet name for her. But I want to thank you, Madam Clerk, for you, the entire team.
So why is it that the DA is calling out the county clerk or the court clerk? I keep calling her a county clerk, but she's a court clerk, Becky Hill. Why does he keep calling her out and giving her all these salutations if she didn't have a major impact on the court case? That's kind of odd. You know, they're going out their way, and it seems like everybody in that court, on the state side at least, knows her nature or knows what she's allegedly been claimed to have done. I don't know. That's weird.
Why would Becky Hill talk with jurors in violation of the court's order? Murdaugh's lawyers say she had plans after the trial that a mistrial would have derailed. Those plans included writing a book. The book came out several weeks ago and is entitled Behind the Doors of Justice. Her ghostwriter, Neil Gordon, spoke with me about his experience with Becky Hill.
I started working with her in late March. It was an interesting way that we came together.
So I'm not even going to listen to this Neil Gordon guy because obviously, you know, he's going to be biased towards her. We saw in the previous clip he's telling us how much integrity Becky Hill has. And, you know, look, she might. These are just allegations, right? This isn't proven. She may not have said anything to these jurors. But the point is that the allegations have been brought up. They have to be investigated. And, you know, you got to put two and two together. You know, you got to remember that this town is a very small town. Everybody knows each other. You know, I've watched hours of the trial, and there are witnesses that know Alex Murdaugh for years. Some of the people on the witness stand have gone to high school with him. They've known him since he was 16. A lot of people know him from his younger days as they were kids themselves in school with him, throughout their careers with him. So this is a town where everyone's kind of tight knit and sides are chosen and lines are drawn in the sand. So, you know, if someone's going to go to bat for Becky Hill, who, you know, I haven't done much research on her, but I'm sure the pattern remains, right? She probably has an army behind her who's known her since she was early in her career. They're not going to out her. And just that clip that we saw before of the DA and the prosecutor giving her that shout out seems like everybody knew the part she played to get this guilty verdict. Okay, so Alex Murdaugh's defense team makes these allegations against Becky Hill, and now the state responds. And they responded today in 48 pages. Of jury tampering with the 48-page motion. They said, we're not just going to answer you. We're going to answer you in 48 fucking pages. Titled, State's Response to Defendant's Motion for a New Trial and State's Motion to Strike. I'll need time to deep dive the entire motion later, but the exciting bits are an affidavit by Rebecca Hill and statements made from the actual jurors, and I couldn't wait to share those with you. So let's get started. This is Legal Updates with Cassidy. Becky Hill categorically denies these allegations, and the jury backs her. And shout out to Legal Updates with Cassidy. Welcome. This is a great video, by the way. Watch the whole thing if you get a chance. We're going to start off by reading Becky's affidavit. This affidavit is submitted at the request of the Attorney General of South Carolina. Okay, so this is Becky Hill directly responding to Alex Murdaugh's allegations that she tampered with a jury. And again, jury tampering, very, very serious. So if you guys want a more extreme example, right, back in the day when Giuliani was in New York City taking down the New York City mob, right, they would have these trials. And there's a very infamous trial of John Gotti, who is convicted of like murders and peddling drugs, just like crazy shit, right? I mean, this is 30, 40, 50 life sentences we're talking about. He's very calm throughout the trial. He's not nervous at all. He actually tells the prosecutor that he's going to beat the case. And I don't know. I don't think Giuliani was at that time prosecuting, but I may be wrong. But he tells them he's going to beat the case, and they're all thinking it's because of the star attorney that he has. And no, it's not. It's because they paid off a juror. So that's a little bit more serious than just verbally telling the jury something. But that is a form of jury tampering. It's very serious stuff. So here's Becky Hill's response. So on line 7, as to the allegations within affidavit of juror number 630, they're talking about a specific juror, number 630 here. Becky Hill says, I did not tell the jury, quote, not to be fooled by Mr. Murdaugh. I did not instruct the jury to, quote, watch him closely. I did not instruct the jury to, quote, look at his actions. Okay, so she's over here saying the things that they accused me of doing, I didn't do them.
Lina, I was not requested to specifically address. As such, this affidavit is not intended to address every allegation contained within the motion for new trial. After being elected in 2020, I have served as the clerk of court in Colleton County. I was the elected clerk of court for Colleton County during the case of State of South Carolina versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh.
Okay, so she's got experience. She's within the court system for a little bit of time now. And now this is conversations with other jury members as well. So, 785. I did not ask the juror, well, what makes you think he's guilty? 785. The Murdaughs probably got to him. 785 again. I did not tell the juror I would reinstate a restraining order against her ex-husband. So there's a lot of, here's a different one, 826. When juror 826 asked to speak with me, the conversation took place in the jury room hall within earshot of bailiff Bill Polk. The conversation did not involve the evidence, the witnesses, or substance of trial. So pretty much she's saying that, we had a conversation. Yes, I had a conversation independently with the juror, but it had nothing to do with the trial. I did not have private conversations with juror 826 in a bathroom. Yeah, so, this type of stuff, guys, I don't really know which way to go with it. It seems like there's a lot of allegations, a lot of instances. Just looking at the evidence, there's a lot of instances in which she did talk to jurors, okay? And because it's very specific, like she's got a couple of lines here where she says, I did not tell jurors not to, and then it's be fooled by Alex Murdaugh's stories, right? I did not ask them, well, what makes you think he's guilty? These are very specific statements, and I just don't know how you can have so many of these specific statements without maybe having some of them. So, if not all, or maybe Alex Murdaugh's attorneys just contrived this up and they're false allegations. That could be true too. Here's another one. Look at this. I did not tell jurors, y'all are going to hear things that will throw you all off. Don't let that distract you or mislead you. That's huge. You can't tell a jury that. By the way, that's my little pup playing with his squeaky toy. He always does it when I'm recording. He never does it when, we're just chilling and there's nothing going on. All right, so there you have it. That is Alex Murdaugh's defense team's allegations against Becky Hill, the court clerk. And look, I mean, if she did say those things to jurors, these are very specific statements, right? She's pretty much telling jurors to ignore all the stuff that's going to throw him off and just give him a guilty verdict. She's making threats supposedly, like no one's smoking cigarettes until, they figure out if this guy is guilty, and he better be. So, those are things you can't say. But as of this time, the courts haven't indicted her with anything. These are just allegations that the defense team is making. And we're going to see what happens, right? The courts are going to go over the evidence and then they'll make a decision as to whether these are true or not. But if they are, then a lot of time would have been wasted. A lot of resources would have been wasted. They're going to have to do another trial against Alex. So that's where we're at right now. One of the things that gets to me, there's only two things really. And one of them is the defense team is outlining this motive that she has, right? They want to make it seem as though that book she's releasing, for some reason, a guilty verdict for Alec would be in line and cohesive to the release of her book. She wants to ensure that he had a guilty verdict, which he did. And then the second thing that gets me is that the statements that the defense is bringing up they're very specific statements, right? They're saying that they independently verified with specific jurors as to what Becky Hill told them. And when you have specific statements, the question is why? And it's either because something along those lines was indeed said, or the defense team is just really creative and they're making all of this shit up, which is also a possibility, right? So we're going to see how this unfolds and we'll keep you updated. My name is Husseini. Thanks for listening. Like, comment, subscribe. This is only advice.